The Edgerunners Collab went really well, didn't it? How did everyone like it? Personally, I'm willing to say it's the best collaboration in gacha history, and that distinction goes to both CD Projekt Red, who handled the scriptwriting, and KURO Games, who hosted Wuthering Waves, which would include the game's assets, animations, cinematics, new music, and how the story was presented in-game. The ball was in KURO's park to make sure the script was done justice in the aesthetics department, and by God did they lock in. However, best collaboration in gacha history is a heavy crown to give, so I'm going to go over the why. First, I will go over KURO's numerous upgrades to their visual storytelling throughout the game's lifespan, and then I will talk about how these developments gave KURO the necessary toolkit to do CDPR script justice. The game was always consistently praised for its in-game story animation and presentation. As mentioned by Bartosz Tibor, VP of franchise of CD Projekt Red and the writer for Edgerunners, this was actually one of the reasons as to why CDPR chose KURO to collaborate with Edgerunners. KURO has always done their best to use the 3D environment to its fullest to tell their stories, pre-rendered cutscenes or basic dialogue scenes otherwise. Their previous game, Punishing Grey Raven, was especially exceptional at prose, but that didn't really work out in Wuthering Waves. I mean, they did attempt it back in Brand's and Rocha's companion quests before they were replaced with segues, but in my opinion, it didn't really work out very well, and they returned to using 3D. But if you want, you can go read character profile stories. They are very well written. In version 2.8, the game got an extremely noticeable upgrade in visuals, animations, cinematography, lighting, everything. It was like a special cutscene, but it was actually standard dialogue. Prior to 2.8, the separation between cutscene and gameplay was noticeable. Not to say that the game looked poorly, if anything it has always looked great, but you could tell when the scene changed. In Honami, it became seamless and it legitimately only evolved with each version update, peaking in version 3.3 when the game would continue to switch between cutscenes and gameplay in the Exostrider vs. Aleph 1 fight. This was thanks to the research they did when they were developing the cinematic mode for the bike in 3.0. This mode featured a lot of preset camera angles that the game would cycle through, and KURO studied Red Dead Redemption 2's camera as reference, as well as its associated functions such as letterboxing and interactable cutscenes. Evidently, they made it work because we're clearly reaping the benefits from it, which they described as a pleasant surprise. While the camera might have been deployed in 2.8, and I am making a pretty large guess here, it's not like I have access to the dev kit, you actually get to see traces of its functionality throughout Rinsita. KURO had always preferred to use the widescreen format for their cutscenes. Even on release, the set sail opening cinematic for the game was rendered in widescreen for their YouTube channel. Throughout the story, the letterboxing was used more and more and integrated better and better like it was in Red Dead Redemption 2, which leads us back to how KURO handles cinematics. Since 2.8, KURO made the jump to fully use cinematography, which, to put it simply, is the art of knowing how to direct and use a camera to capture a scene to tell a story. Let's look at a few examples. Example 1. The scene in Luke's Segway where the Grand Architect tells our heroes that there is a spy among them. Instead of leading with a static scene, KURO directed the shot by having Rover and Luke move forward surrounded by mingling students before having all of them stare to signify the feeling of being watched. Example 2. The shot where Rover gets provoked by the Grand Architect. Rover's intent was to attack them, but Luke tells them to stand down. This is directed by panning the camera from the sword to show intent, to Rover's expression, and then to them looking at Luke, who shakes his head to lead the conversation. Rover doesn't vocalize their intent at all, but the way it is shot does the text's job. Now, let's analyze a small part of a scene from the Cyberpunk collab where Lucy talks about David at the balcony of their home in Night City with Rover. This section will have spoilers for the Edgerunners anime. You'd notice that every good scene always starts with the establishing shot. You must always tell your audience where your scene takes place in. It doesn't really matter if it's obvious by gameplay that we're obviously in Night City. If the scene starts with Lucy immediately talking, then that would create a bit of dissonance, be that from film, manga, or any media really. The next shot starts with a close-up of Lucy, which indicates the subject of the scene. She's melancholic and emotional, staring at the highways of Night City. Based on the anime, she might be recalling how David barreled through Night City in an attempt to get to her. Rover enters the scene in the next shot, signifying their supporting role status. This shot is composed using the rule of thirds. Ideally, your point of focus, meaning who or whatever you want your audience to pay attention to, should take place around the intersecting areas, which in this case is both Rover and Lucy. Rover looks at the view of Night City before shifting their gaze to Lucy as they approach her. She slightly turns her head to acknowledge Rover, but the camera hides her eyes. Typically, this is done to hide what the character is thinking. My guess is that the intent here is to show that Lucy knows that Rover is there, but her focus is entirely on Night City. All of this is conveyed subconsciously to the viewer without a single line of voice dialogue, and this is what Wuthering Waves excels in. Let's continue. The dialogue starts and we get a quick shot of Night City composed using the golden ratio. The way that it works is that the composition guides your eyes based on the arc. Based on this, you'll likely see the city first, almost ignoring Rover and Lucy until your view naturally goes to them. The shot then changes to a slight tilt, known as a Dutch angle, using the rule of thirds. Usually, Dutch angles are used to signify unease, which Night City definitely elicits on Lucy. She's praising the city's vista, but she definitely has mixed feelings about it. Rover, meanwhile, is entirely level because they're not as experienced in this area's life like her, but sympathizes with her based on their experience. The camera briefly pans from the city to the road before returning to her face. Her expression turns bitter as she says, "This whole dream," because again, this city was what took David away from her. By now, it should be clear that KURO puts a lot of effort into their cinematography, as is evident from the rest of the game, so I will now talk about KURO's facial animations. KURO has briefly touched upon this in their dev videos, but I will also be filling in the blanks with my own experiences. KURO actually does a lot of pre-production for characters before their appearances in-game. First, they make a 2D expression sheet with a list of all possible expressions that the devs want their character to make. Then, they port their expressions to 3D. To my knowledge, this streamlines the process so that when the facial animator needs to make a certain expression for a character, they can just go look at the pre-made library instead of asking the director. This saves a lot of potential time that could be used to refine or be a little more ambitious with another scene. Of course, this isn't the end because even certain expressions look weird when used in certain unflattering angles. So to make them as good looking as possible, KURO will sometimes break the model so that it looks the way the director wants it to look. Throughout this game's history, KURO probably takes a lot of pride in properly conveying character expressions to show what the character is feeling, rather than only relying on voice dialogue. Let's take a look at one Edgerunners Collab scene, being the train ride before the final battle when Lucy breaks the news to Rebecca. Lucy is close to giving up, so Rebecca has to step up. First, her expression's serious when she addresses the reality that she's dead and so is David to Lucy. But next, her expression shifts. She goes from serious to giving an earnest smile. Lucy remembers them and that's literally why they're there, which changes to a proud smile. "You're still alive, aren't you? Good for you. Keep it up," is what is being communicated with Rebecca's expression. And when Rebecca says that Lucy still has to face reality, she has this face of determination. She stresses that this is something that Lucy has to do, but she also acknowledges that Lucy is in a bad spot because Rebecca would love nothing more than to be there to support Lucy, but since she's dead, she can't. So she makes this really disappointed expression. There's also one more scene at the end after Lucy finally reunites with David, and Rebecca basks in the sunlight with her hand up. However, her gaze shifts to it, and then her expression changes. By now, she knows that her time is running out, and that means so is David's. So, in complete Rebecca-like fashion, she puts herself second and tells him to be with Lucy, just so that the two can enjoy their time together just that little bit longer. So with the incredible script provided by CD Projekt Red, as well as all the effort KURO put to make sure that the script was done justice through cinematography and animation, it turns the collab story from just a good read into frankly a flawless experience. Like breaking from the script a little, dude, it's insane, it's genuinely crazy. This is legitimately the best collab story ever. Before writing the script I was like, surely it can't be that good. No, it is that good. They even upgraded their facial animation rig to do Rebecca's justice as she was presented in the anime. But anyway, now that we've seen what KURO can do for Cyberpunk Edgerunners, what other IP do you want them to collaborate with in the future, if the opportunity arises? BGR is doing a Data Live collab, by the way. Personally, I kinda want to see Wuthering Waves collab with Guilty Gear. Alright, thanks for watching everyone. It's not a lore video, but I hope you still enjoyed it. Please hit like, subscribe. Okay, thank you.